So today, guys, we're going to play around with adding and subtracting fractions. And if you have a hard time with this, don't worry too much because it's common knowledge that 4 out of 3 people have problems with fractions. Huh. Okay, so adding and subtracting fractions here. Remember this. Negative 3/4 plus, I don't know, third. What do I do with this? How do I add these together? You cannot do any weird stuff. Remember that fractions, it's harder to add and subtract fractions than it is to multiply or divide. When you multiply, you just multiply the tops and then you multiply the bottom. So if this was multiply, you just go negative 3 over 12, or you would have crossed these out and said these reduce to this, and then it turns into negative quarter. But when you add, so if I go back to this question here, adding, what you need to have is a common denominator, and you look for the lowest common denominator. And between 4 and 3, the lowest number that 4 and 3 both go into is 12. And to get to 12, you need to multiply 4 by 3, and then you need to multiply the top also by 3. And to get to 12 here, you need to multiply 3 by 4, and you need to multiply the top by 4. So on the top here, I have minus 9. On the bottom, I have 12. And then on the right, I have 4 over 12. What I do is I only add the 12ths. So how many 12ths do I have? The bottom stays the same. Excuse me, I have minus 9 plus 4. So that would be negative 5/12. Okay, so that's how you add fractions. If you can't remember, you need a common denominator to move on from there. And the same with irrational expressions. So for example, if I have something like this, 3 over x plus 2 plus 3 over, or 8 over x plus 2, well, that's not a bad deal because on the bottom I have my x plus 2's. And so I can just add those together and say, what fraction of x plus 2 do I have? I have 3, and I have 8, I have 11 over x plus 2. Also, don't forget to state your restrictions. So at any point you have anything in the bottom that involves a variable, you're going to state restrictions. And here, the only restriction I have is that x cannot be 2. Okay. So, and to state restrictions, remember, I don't want this to be 0. So how I get this is x plus 2 cannot be 0. X cannot be 2, and not equal sign or can't be equal to sign is the same as the equal sign as far as working with things. Now, that's great, but what gets a little more confusing now is when the bottom of it has of an expression are not the same. So if I had this, I'm going to throw a negative in here just to make it more fun. So adding and subtracting are the same thing essentially. So here if I have, let's make this fun and do this. Like that. So if I have x plus 3 over x plus 1, subtract x plus 5 over x plus 6. You don't need brackets there. I just kind of threw them in there. If that's the case, what you're going to do is you're going to keep track of restrictions at all times too. So that cannot be -1. That cannot be -6. But then you look here and you say, hold on, I can't add these together. Okay, I can't add this plus this because I don't have the same denominator. And to get the same denominator, it's a little bit easier maybe than fractions. All you do is you figure out what's on the bottoms here, and then multiply the other sides so that you have the same thing on the bottom. So for example, I have x plus 1 here. I don't have x plus 1 on this side, so I multiply this by x plus 1. And then if I multiply the bottom by x plus 1, I have to multiply the top by x plus 1. And then here I have an x plus 1, so I need x plus 6 and x plus 6. And then all of this is going to be over x plus 1, x plus 6, so the denominator stays the same. But then what you'll do is you'll FOIL this out and FOIL this out, and then add and subtract them. So this is x squared plus 6x plus, so I'll skip a step, plus 6x plus 3x is plus 9x plus 18. So that's just FOILing. Here I can't forget this negative. I can't. Okay, so the negative's here. So this is minus, and I'll put a bracket around this whole thing. X squared plus 6x plus 5. And then through the magic of Smartboard, you need an extra step. You need to change all these signs. So when you open up that bracket, you need to change all the signs to negative. I just make that a giant negative. It's kind of ugly. What can I do here? There. Negative x squared minus 6x minus 5. And get rid of that guy too. So then collect like terms. This and this. How many x squareds do I have? None. I have 9x. I have minus 6x. So I end up with 3x. Plus 18 plus minus 5 is 13. And then the bottom is the same. Okay, so FOIL, collect like terms, and then you're done. Okay, that's adding and subtracting. The only difference with subtracting, again, is to deal with the negative. Where it gets a little bit easier actually is sometimes you can simplify before you move on. So for example, let me just look at one of the examples we have here, number 11 from your note. Number 11, you have this. So 3x squared plus 7x plus 2 plus x plus, oops, whatever, x plus 2 over 2x squared minus x minus 10. So, did you guys get that joke from earlier? 4 out of 3 people have problems with fractions. Doesn't really make sense. And I don't know if that's true because 28% of all stats are made up. That was the sound of me slapping my knee. Okay, so here you're going to factor the top and the bottom. And when you do that through the magic of the Australian method or whatever you're going to use, you end up with this as your factors. Here on the left and on the right, you end up with, what do we have here? 2x minus 5 and x plus 2. So x, 2x minus 5 and x plus 2. Okay, before you start crossing things out or dealing with stuff, state your restrictions. So look over here, look at your restrictions. So x cannot be, change the sign, negative 1 over 3. Okay, so change the sign, divide by 3. X cannot be negative 2. X cannot be plus 5 over 2. X cannot be negative 2, which I already have. Okay, so those are our restrictions. Don't write this. Don't write it again. Okay, that's just being redundant. Okay, so before I add and subtract, your life will be so much easier if you do it this way. You look here and you have factors on the top and the bottom. And then you ask yourself, before I add and subtract, can I reduce the left and can I reduce the right? Yes or no? Maybe I can reduce the left or the right, or in this case, it happens to be both. So I have a 3x plus 1 as a factor here. I have a 3x plus 1 as a factor here, so I scratch them out. So on the top, I have nothing, but don't put nothing. It's now 1. So on the left, now I'm left with 1 over x plus 2. On the left, x plus 2 and x plus 2 cancel out. I'm left with this. And now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I will add these together. I need a common denominator. So now I need 2x minus 5 here and 2x minus 5 here. And then over here, I'm also going to need x plus 2 and x plus 2. So I'll multiply by what's missing. So when I do this, my bottom is 2x minus 5, x plus 2. That's my denominator. My numerator, my top, is just 2x minus 5, and that was a plus sign, so I'll just open up the brackets and do this. And then I collect these, I'll be left with 3x minus 17 over this. And that's it. Okay. That's about it, really. Just be careful again. If you see any terms that are not in the right order, write them in the right order. So for example, I think in number, where am I, 12, you see this at some point. Okay, that's not the way we want to write this. We want to write this like this. And then at this case, right away, common factor that negative out. Just keep doing that. And then deal with this the way you would deal with this. We can't use the Australian method on this. Well, you can. You just have to be incredibly careful if you're going to do that. So I would say don't bother. Okay, what I would do is get the negative out, use common factoring, or sorry, use factoring of a trinomial or the Australian method or whatever you have to do for these three terms here, and then know that whatever my brackets are, okay, x plus something, there's a negative in front of the whole thing, and then deal with that as you have to. Okay, and that'll make your life a lot easier if you just consistently do that. And that's all I got to say about this. Good luck. Enjoy.